Good evening, everyone. We'll be getting started in a couple of seconds, just a minute to go. Thank you for those who have joined, and I look forward to the second session where we're going to dive deep into API implementation. Let's give it one more minute, and then we'll begin officially. Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear me properly. Awesome, thank you. I think it's 7 p.m. I think this is our official starting time, so I'll go right ahead and proceed. Right, welcome to everyone to session 2 of the 6 weeks live coding. In the first week, we're just doing, the basic project setup, also some GitHub basics, and also setting up a CI/CD pipeline and connecting it to AWS cloud platform. So now we ran a server on an EC2 instance on AWS, but today I'm not going to touch or dwell on deploying the application. I'm just going to solely focus on the API endpoint and the functionality, right? So I'm not going to look at that. We will look at that again at the end of the 6 weeks where we actually deploy the full application to AWS and also configure an RDS instance on AWS. So for now, we're going to work locally. We're just going to push our changes, the code changes to GitHub. But everything else, we're going to work locally now on our machines. So we're going to use PostgreSQL. Yeah, that's about, and also you're going to use Postman to test our endpoints. That's basically the tools that you need for today's lesson. Yeah, so without wasting any time, let us get started. So what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen. Please give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Oh, awesome, great. So now, if you remember last time, we just wrote a simple backend code that returns a message when we access a certain endpoint, right? If you remember correctly, that's what we're doing last time. So this is just a message to simulate data that is coming from a database. So now what we're going to do today, we're going to take it a step further. We're actually going to connect to a database, and our data is going to be coming from a database. And also we're going to add more endpoints because we're going to focus a lot on login, registration, password reset, and also recovering your password. That's basically what we're going to focus on a lot today. Right. So now, without wasting time, what you need to do is firstly, you need to install Postgres SQL, and then from there onwards, you're going to use what we call as, when you install your Postgres SQL, it's going to also install pgadmin4. That's what you're going to use to as a user interface to access your Postgres SQL database, right? That is what you're going to use for as your user interface to access and manipulate your database. So basically, this is what I'm talking about. So you're going to have pgadmin. This is what we use as a management tool for Postgres SQL. So you will see quickly, after you install Postgres SQL, it's going to ask you to create a root username and a root password. That is like your root username and password for Postgres SQL. That is what you're going to use to access your management tools for Postgres SQL. Please do not forget that password and username, because it will mean you'll have to reinstall PostgreSQL all the time if you have to use it, if you forget those credentials. Right, so you will see it's still loading here. Hopefully it doesn't take a lot of time. So now you will see there you've got a server, and then you will see that once I click on servers on the drop down, it's going to ask me to enter a password for user Postgres. This is my root username. So I've already configured a root password for this root username. So I'm just quickly going to enter that password, and you will see that it connects to my Postgres SQL server, right? So you will see here, this is the default database that is created. Is the same as my username. So it's Postgres. This is the database that comes by default with when you install PostgreSQL. Then if you go on login and group roles, you will see that this is the user that I used to log in into my server, right? This is the username. So now, without wasting time, I want us to create our own user, because we don't want to use a root username and password to manipulate our databases. That is not good practice. So you need to create your own user, and then you assign your own privileges to that user, so that you adhere to the good practices of accessing your database. So now what we'll do here is we're going to say create. Then we're going to create that user. Let's call this user, let's just call it NodeStack, right? Okay, so let me spell it right. Let's call it NodeStack. Then you can go to definition, and then let's give it a password. And then we're not putting an expiry date to this username, but it is good practice to put an expiry date to it, so that every time it asks you to renew when that certain period has passed, right? It's good practice to do that, but because we are doing testing purposes, there's no need for us to do the account expires on which date, right? Now I'm going to assign the privileges. I want to log in. I want this user to be a super user. I want to create roles. I want to be able to create databases. Also inherit from parent roles, right? Fine. These are the basic settings that we need. Now with this membership, I want this role to have admin rights, and also with the role for members with admin rights. Then now I'm not going to set parameters or anything else. I can set parameters for database. For instance, I can add what to for it to do on a certain database and whatsoever. But then I don't need to do that for now. We're just gonna have a simple user requirement. So now you see we've created the user. There it is, NodeStack. Now, because we've created the user, we want to create our own database. We don't want to use the database that came by default with the setup. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click here. We're going to create a new database. We're going to give it a name, right? So I'm just going to give it the same name as my username. I'm just going to give it NodeStack. And then the owner of this database, I want it to be the user that we just created now, which is NodeStack, right? That's the user that I want to be the owner of this database, right? And then I can further on go to other parameters, just check what I want to add. But for now, I'm just going to end on general, and then assign that user to be the owner. Then I'm just going to save. I'm just going to save that. Now you will see there now, we've got the database, the NodeStack database is created. We've got the schemas, which is public, where the tables are, where we've got the views, the trigger functions, the procedures, operators, everything that we need in order to manipulate our tables or our database. So it pre-populates everything there. But you will see now at the moment, we do not have any tables that exist within this database, right? Now, since our database is set up, we've set up our database, we've got a user that will access the database, and then we've got also we've got the database. Sorry about that. We've got the database, and we've configured the user that owns the database. So now from here onwards, we can carry on now to go a step further and actually start writing our backend code that is going to interact with our database, right? So now we'll go back to our code. Let me just increase the screen so that from the last lesson, people are complaining about they cannot see what I'm typing. Is this sufficient enough? Can you see? Can you see what I'm typing on the terminal? Is this okay? Awesome, great. Right. So now, if you remember the last time, we've written just this code to say return certain data from the backend when you access this endpoint or that endpoint, and then we are running our server on a certain port, which is port 5000, right? Now, I'm just going to quickly erase everything here because we no longer need that code. No, let me not erase everything actually, because we're going to need some of the things here. Yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. So now we need to organize our project structure. What do we need? We need to configure our database connection. So what does that tell us? Okay, we need to separate and put our project source code in a way that even when I pass the code to the next person, they'll still be able to understand what is happening. So now, for instance, we spoke about a database. We need to configure, we've configured the database, but now we need to configure a way to connect to the database. So that's the first thing that we're going to need. So I'm going to create a folder called config. Then inside that folder, I'm going to say database.js. Now, this is where it tells me that, okay, this is where now I'm going to have my connection configuration so that I'm able to connect to the database, right? So that's basically what I need. So now with that said, we're going to connect to our database, right? Now, how do we do that? How do we connect to our database? Firstly, what we need is we need to initialize a few things. So for now, what we're going to do now is I'm going to sequelize everything. What do I mean by sequelize, right? Does anyone understand what sequelize is? Sequelize is basically a popular Node.js ORM. What is an ORM? ORM is an object relational mapper that simplifies working with relational databases like your MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite, SQL Server, by providing an easy-to-use JavaScript API for interacting with database tables as if they were JavaScript objects. You will see what I mean by that. When I say sequelize, you will see what we mean by that, right? So now, from here onwards, what we need to do now is I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to do, right? And then from there onwards, I'm going to require that. Yeah, that's basically what I'm going to do. Oh, sorry. Now another thing that I require is the environment where I require the environment.env. This is where I'm going to store all my secrets where I'm going to actually use to log into the database or whatever services that I need to log in. So I need to ensure that all these things are secured. So what does this mean? this tells me that I need to now go back. For instance, I'm just gonna copy a command here. I need to install certain prerequisites before I can carry on. You'll see the npm install express. This is for Postgres. I need SQLize, and then I need this for my tokens, for encryption, sorry. And then I need that JSON web token, and then I need this for storing my secrets, right? So I'm just gonna quickly run that and install that. Then while it's installing there, let us carry on with writing our code. So I'm going to say const SQLize, and then I'm going to say new SQLize, right? And then I'm going to do that. All right, while it's still installing there, let's not worry about that. So now I'm going to say, before I can start writing this code here, because I'm installing all these things, what I need to do now is to come back here into the main folder here and create a .env file, right? Remember I told you about, oh, sorry. Created it in the wrong directory. Yeah. What I want. Yeah. Now I'm going to create a .env file. So now remember from the previous class, I spoke about secrets, where you store your secrets that you don't want people, when you deploy your code or push it to GitHub, so that they see your secrets. This is where now we are going to store those things. So basically now from this, what I need from this is I'm just gonna quickly copy some of the things, guys, so that we move quickly, so that by the end of the class, we are done with everything. So now what I need here is these things, right? I need the DB host, which is local host. I need the DB user. Remember the DB user? What was our DB user? Our DB user was what? NodeStack, right? And then what was our DB password? Okay. This was our DB password. And then also now again, our DB name, right? Our DB name is what? NodeStack. Now, another important part, we need the JWT secret. This is our JW token secret that for our app that we're going to use all the time to regenerate access tokens for each user, right? So now we need to create this. How do we go about that? There's also a command that I've got here that I'm just going to quickly copy and paste it there. So you'll see here now I'm saying node, I want to create using the crypto library that I imported. Then I want to generate random bytes, 32 bits to string hex format, right? So I'm just going to write that. And then there is, then we're going to copy and paste that there. So now this is what you don't share to the public, because if I can get hold of this, I can generate a user and generate access tokens to your application, and I'll always have access and I'll always be authorized, right? This is very important. Hence, we are storing them inside what .env. This is our environment for what? For storing our sensitive data. Because even when we deploy, this .git ignore is going to ignore this file and not push it to the public, which is GitHub. So now it means you will, wherever you are deploying, you're going to need to configure this environment variables again on whatever environment where you will be deploying. You will see as we go towards the end of this sessions, how we're going to actually configure this in our environment on our EC2 instance, so that it's not available to the public, but only available to our application, right? Now, since we are done there, I can go back to now on this. And then now what I can do is I can say process.env. Now I want to access what? I want to access I want to access the environment variables that are stored in here. This is a way that I'm able to access them. So this is just the way to access them. And then now I need to access everything. So user, and then I can say I want the DB pass, right? So from there, after I got the DB pass, what I can do is I want to now say, okay, what is my host? My host is again process.env, and then we're going to get DB host, right? And then dialect now is what type of engine am I running, database engine that I'm running. Okay, I don't know what's happening. My screen has frozen a bit. Right, sorry about that. And then I'm going to say I'm using Postgres, right? From there, I want to say logging. Disable this logging in production for cleaner console output. But for now, I'm just going to say true because I want to see everything that is happening because this is still what development phase, right? So I don't care about all those. I want to see all those messages that are appearing, right? So now from here onwards, now I'm going to say, because I've set up the basic connection, this is like more of a connection string to my database. So now I want to authenticate. I want to authenticate to the database and see the actual working that we are actually connected to the database. So what I will do is now, because I've initialized, I've got that SQLize, right? This is SQLize. I've initialized that. So what I'll do is I'm going to say SQLize. What do I want to do? I want to authenticate to the database. And then from there onwards, after I authenticate, what do I want to do? Sorry about that. Yeah, after I authenticate, what do I want to do now? I'm just going to do that. After I do that, I want to say console.log. I just want to show a message to say connection established, for instance, right? But then now also, if that's not true, then I want to catch and then get the error. Then from getting the error there, then I can say console.error. And then I'll say connection failed. Right? So this is basically the script just to check the database connection. And then from there, I'll say module exports equals to then SQLize, right? So this is the basic way of connecting to the database, right? That's the basic way of connecting to the database. So now let's find a way to test if our database has actually connected, right? So now what we'll do now is we are going to write inside our server script. This is where now we are going to write and test our application if it does connect to the server, right? So now for us to move quickly with this, what I'll do is I'm just going to quickly copy and paste the code so that we focus more on the other codes that we need to be running, right? So now this will be the code. I wrote this code a bit earlier just to prepare for the class. So this will be the routes. You will see all these routes coming together, how they are actually going to work together as we carry on. So now we are going to initialize our Express Node.js application. We're going to do that, and then we want to use that application, right? So this is just the route, the API endpoint setup. Then now we're going to say database sync and server start. So now we are going to, what are we going to do? We are going to start our server and also check if our database has actually connected with the credentials that we've actually given it here. So now from here onwards, what we are going to do is we're going to just say node. Just so that we run our application. Just going to say node. Sorry, can you still see what I'm typing on the terminal? Right. See, now it's telling us there's some errors. Module not found. What is that module? So we need to go and check now. You see, it's telling us about roots, oath, and all these things. It's telling us all about the other things that we did not actually configure. You see, it says cannot find module roots, oath. So meaning now here it cannot find this. This is what it cannot find. So what we can literally do is come back. Let's comment out that. Yeah, we don't need all this, even this for now, so that our application can run. So now what I will do is I'll just come back here and then we run that. Let's see if we've got any error. Okay, there we go. We've got our server is running. So you will see all this log. If I come back to, say for instance, I come back to the database and then I say false here, you will see that it will not show me all this other logging of information that I don't need. That will be in production. When I say logging is false, this is what you will use for when you are deploying to production. But because we are still in testing phase and we are developing, we want to see everything that is happening so that we know where everything goes wrong and we are able to follow that. That is why here I said logging must be true. So that is very important. This is a developer tool that you need to get accustomed to in terms of bug finding and analyzing your code. So I'm just gonna run that again. So now you will see that I've got the server. Server is ready now. It's able to connect to the database. So now, for instance, let's say I stop the database and then I come in here. Let's change the password. Let's make a wrong password. Then now let's run that. You will see that immediately I run that, it's supposed to give me an error to say authentication failed. You will see that it says auth failed because it could not authenticate to the database using these credentials because the password is wrong. So that is how you can do that. Fine. I hope that makes sense. I will take questions later on if there are questions for me. Right. So now, since we are ready to carry on now with the rest of our code, we've done that. So now let's go to our user models, right? We need to create, remember now we created a connection to the database. No, we've set up the database. We've set up the connection to the database. So now we need to do what? We need to set up the models, which is our tables. We need to set up a table now that we're going to use to manipulate data, register, use it to log in users, and etc., right? So now, what we need now, this tells us that now, okay, now we need to create another folder that's called models. And then inside that folder called models, we need to create a model called what? A user. I'm just gonna call this user.js, right? So yeah, basically from that, I'm just gonna also copy and paste the code. Then I explain the code. so that we move on quickly, right? So that we get to the login and registration where we actually write the code. So now here you will see data types. We're going to require that SQLize. Remember, this is what our ORM for mapping to our database so that we are able to communicate seamlessly to our database. Then we're going to also say SQLize require what? Config database. So now it means we cannot do anything with the models until we actually do what? Connect to our database. Remember, config database, this is where we connect to our database, right? So we need to require that because we need to connect to the database before we can do anything, right? Just give me a second, guys. All right, just checking something. Right. So now from there onward, we're going to say we want to create a table called user. And then we're going to define, we want to create a table called user. Then we're going to define the data types and our columns, right? We're going to have name, the type, the data type there is string. Allow null. No, we do not allow null values for this. We're going to have surname, we're going to have email, we're going to have password, and then we're going to have a role. Remember, this is a full stack application where we're going to have an admin user and also a normal user. This is where privileges will come in terms of what can a user do on our platform, right? Like, for instance, a user will be able to do certain functions, and then an admin will be able to do certain functions. They won't have the same authorization in terms of our application, right? So now the table name is users. It's going to be called users. Sorry about that. Table name is going to be called users. And then now timestamp. What does this mean? Timestamp true. This is now going to add additional fields for created at and updated at. You will see them as we create the table. So it's going to add those additional 2 rows where you are able to know when was the last update done to that row or particular row, and then also when was it updated, when was it created. This is where now, even if you go on Facebook, it can tell you when, or you go on Twitter, it will tell you when you joined Twitter. This is where that comes in. Created at, this is where that comes in to say your account has been active since when. Yeah, this is where that comes in terms of JavaScript. You will see that as we carry on. So now we are done. We're going to just say module export user, right? We are done with defining our model. So we're going to create a table called users. It's going to have the columns, role, password, email, surname, and name. And then it's going to add 2 additional timestamp columns called updated at and created at. So you will see as we create those. Now, from here onwards, after creating the models, we need to create the middleware. What does the middleware mean? The middleware basically is basically the code that we're going to run to ensure that only the authorized personnel are able to do certain things or access certain endpoints on our application, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a folder called middleware. And then from there, I'm going to say auth.js, right? So basically here, what happens is with our middleware, this is where we check if your token is authenticated before we can actually take you to our protected endpoints. So that is basically what the middleware does, right? So it makes sure also that we can communicate across different domains where we host our applications, right? But then in this case, the middleware in this case only is there to ensure that only authorized personnel can actually get past a certain stage and go into other stages, just to ensure that you are authorized. Only authorized users are able to pass through a certain endpoint to the next. That is the reason why we will have this middleware here. So again, with this one, this is just the supporting code. I'm just going to copy and paste that. So now we're going to require the JSON web token, and then we're also going to require what? The .env config, right? So here what will happen is we're going to have authenticate token, right? And then our headers are going to be authorization, and then we're going to get our token, which is our auth header, and we're going to split that, right? So now if token, right? If not token, if there's no token, the access token it will be required, right? It will tell us that it will be required. So now JWT, and then we're going to verify now because the token exists. We've passed this if statement, the token exists. We're going to verify our token, right? How do we verify our token? Here is that important thing I was talking about. Process env.jw, it's going to come here, it's going to take this, and then it's going to use that to authenticate what? Your token. Because remember, when you registered a user or you logged in, it uses this to create a new token. So it also uses this to verify your token, right? To ensure that your token has not changed or the integrity of your token is not changed. So now, if there is an error, then we're going to return that, and then it's going to say invalid, expired, or invalid or expired token. If not, then we're going to have the user, right? This is the request. We're going to assign that user on the request body, and then we're going to say next. So now, for instance, if this is authenticated and it says go to login page, so now it's going to pass the user with the token that has been authenticated successfully, so that we can reuse that to do other things within our application. So this is the middleware. Middleware is there to check our token if it exists and if the integrity of our token has not been changed, so that we can actually pass you to the next stage of our application. So if your token has not been authorized or whatever, then it's going to say access token required, or it's invalid, or it has expired. So meaning you need to recreate a new access token. Right. Like for instance, now let's say you've been logged in on Facebook for an hour and there's no activity. You haven't moved your mouse or you haven't done anything on Facebook. And then they've set their access token to expire after an hour. And then you go to your profile and you want to change your password. It's going to log you out. It will say for you to continue with this action, please log in again. That login functionality is actually a way for it to recreate a new access token that will expire after an hour as well. But then if you are active on Facebook and then an hour passes, but you are still active, it's still going to retain that access token because it can still see what user activity. But immediately you try and change a password, that token has expired for you to change a password. It's going to require you to re-log in again so that it assigns a new token to allow you to change your password. That's basically what a token and middleware work. It's going to work for our API in this instance. I hope that makes sense. Right. So now we are going to continue. We are done with the middleware. So now our next part now is to create our routes, right? Let's start with our routes. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to say routes. So inside routes, what do we need inside routes? We need an authentication route. We need a user's route, and we also need a password route. Remember, we want to log in, we want to register, we want to reset and recover password, right? That's basically what we need. So now let us do that. I'm going to create auth where we're actually going to now authenticate, right? So now, because this code is long, I'm also just gonna copy and paste this. And then guys, also this code will be available on GitHub, because I'm going to push this code to GitHub so that you are able to follow on what the lesson was all about today, right? And then you can take it a step further and add additional code if you need to. Now, from here onwards, I'm just going to do that. so that I can explain further in terms of what's happening with the code. So now we're going to require that, right? Express. We're going to require for our encryption, and then also for creating our tokens. And then we are going to require what? Our user model. Because now this is where we are going to do what? We are going to register and log in. So we need what? We need a user model that we created here, so that we are able to use that table that is created within our database. Right now, at the moment, if I go to pgadmin and then I just refresh this, then I come to my tables, there's currently no table created because we have not run our code yet, right? So now, let's start. We're going to configure what? Our router, express.router. We're going to initialize that. Then now our router, this is our endpoint. This is our register what? Endpoint. This is our register endpoint. What we need here, we're going to do an asynchronous function here. So what we're going to do is we're going to request a body from the request, right? From the request, because now when you are on a form, when you are on that form and you want to register, the form is going to have name, surname, email, and your password, right? So when it has that, when we say request body, when you click register, this request here is going to have all that information that is stored within the body of our JSON, and then it's going to assign it to this. So remember that how it's coming within the body must match how you actually write this here. So it starts with the name, surname, email, and password, right? For now, I haven't added password confirmation, validations, and all that. I'm just doing a simple thing so that you test. We're going to expand more in terms of that and adding validation and making sure everything is okay, right? So now we're going to assign the name, surname, email, password from the body request. And then now, if any of this do not exist, then please provide all fields, right? Now, this error information that you see here, at the moment, you are only going to see it in a JSON format. But then when we build our front end, this information here is going to come from the back end and actually gets passed into the front end and is displayed on our user interface to say, please provide all fields or whatever, etc. That's basically that. Now, if all the data exists, now what we want to do is we want to say now, we want to try this. We want to hash our password. This is the password. We want to hash that with our hash algorithm, which is bcrypt, right? And then from there, we do what? We're going to say user. We want to create that user with the hashed password. Now, remember, SQLize, when you say user.create, this is the same as we are now saying insert insert into this table, and then you insert name, surname, email, password, whatever. So now with just this simple line, we've actually used SQLize to actually not write the full SQL code of that. So it knows that when I say user.create, this is when it's going to go into its API in the backend and say, oh, when I create, it's actually saying insert into what? Into that. It knows already that, oh, this is user. Where is user? User is inside models. What are the models? Oh, what is user? The table name is users. It's going to take the table name users, and then it's going to go back there and say, okay, I want to create, I want to insert into that all this columns into the table, right? Then now we're going to have a token. We're going to say JWT sign. We're going to use what? Our secret token for our application. And then we're going to give it an expiration date, which is 1 hour duration. We're going to have, say after 1 hour, the token would have expired, and I can't do things like change password, maybe update profile, and all this sensitive things that I can do within my account. I won't allow you to do them because the token would have expired, right? So now I'm going to say ID, that's the user ID, and then the role. Yeah, then from there onwards, I'm going to bring back a message to say the user was successfully registered, and then I'm going to bring back the token and also the details that the user was registered with. I'm going to return them in a JSON format. You will see this as we test with our with this application here. When we with Postman, when we test with this application, you will see how that works. Then now, if there were errors in the try section, then it's going to return our error and say status 500 and then the error registering user, right? Now, this is just the endpoint for doing what? Registering a user. This is the route that we're going to use to register a user. Great. Now let's look at login. When we look at login now, this is our route, our endpoint for logging in. Same thing happens here. From our body, when I click login, from the request body, it's going to pass what? Email and password. Then I want to get from the body, I want to get the email and password so that I can use it to do what? To verify against the database if the user and the password match, so that I can actually log you in. So now if email or password does not exist, then provide all the details. Then now we're going to say try. Then we're going to now say find one where there's this email, right? Instead of you saying select email from table where email equals to this, you see, that's where SQLize comes in. It has actually shortened everything for us. So we just use this find one, which is equivalent of select from table name where email is this, etc., etc. If you know your SQL language, right? Then now we're going to come here now, and then if user does not exist, right, then invalid credentials. But then if the user exists, but still the compare password that is coming from the database and the one that you've entered, we are comparing now. We are decrypting the one that we have encrypted in our database so that we see whether it matches with the one that I've entered. Then it'll still say invalid credentials, right? Now, token, I'm going to do that sign again. Then it's for 1 hour because now I've passed all this what's validation. So now it means the password and the user does exist and they've actually passed. So now I'm going to create a new token that will expire in what? In an hour. For which role? For that user and that ID. Then I'm going to sign it. Then now the results, I'm going to return JSON, login successful. I'm going to return the token. And then I'm going to return what? I'm going to return the user that has successfully logged in, the details of the user that has successfully logged in, right? And then, yeah, from there you will see if there was an error within this one, then it's just going to say error logging in user. Then it's going to do that. Are we still together? Are you still following, guys? Please give me a thumbs up if you're still following. All right. I'll take the questions at the later stage, guys. Please bear with me. Yeah. Now, from here onwards, we need to create a user, right? This is just, I will show you just now. Our user, this is for when you've logged into a certain profile, whether you've been authenticated now, you are an admin or just a normal user, right? After you have been authenticated, you've went past the middleware, and then obviously you've logged in successfully. Then now, after you've logged in successfully, we're going to check whether were you just a normal user, and then we're going to show you your profile. And then along with what? Your user ID. So your user ID is going to be passed along to your profile so that we can use your user ID to know that, okay, we can load your profile, load your emails or whatever, so that you know that this is my profile. And then if you were an admin root, it knows that, oh, the person who logged in is an admin. It's going to take you to your admin endpoint, and then it's going to tell you that admin access only. So now, for instance, let's say I log in as a normal user and I try to go to this endpoint. It's going to check and say, but this role that logged in is not an admin. So it's going to give me an error and say admin access only. Right? That's basically what it's going to do. But then now an admin can log in as an admin, but go to this endpoint profile. It will still allow him, because he's an admin, he'll be able to see his profile as an admin. That's basically the difference here. So now, in all this, when admin is logged in and is successful, he can be able to do what? List all the users that are available on our application. They can be able to delete a user. They can be able to update certain things for a user. They can be able to do other things for certain users. They can be able to say, okay, this person no longer works in accounting. This person works as a software developer now. This person does this. They no longer do that. So they are the admin. They can be able to do that for that. And then now, as a user for you, you can only be able to change your password, reset your password, recover your password, update your profile information, and maybe fill in timesheets for the work that you were doing throughout the week, depending on what our application actually does, put up a status or whatsoever, etc. Right? This is basically now what the user JS will be doing in terms of that, right? Right, and then now the next one for us to do will be for the password. So now for the password, it's kind of a little bit long. So I'm just going to add that. Then I'm going to say password. Oh, sorry. I'm going to say password.js. Awesome. So now, see, I put it in the wrong place. Let's just move it to the right place. Sorry about that. So password, I'm just gonna, because it's long, just gonna push that. Then I'll explain it line by line. Right. So now also, again, we're going to require all the prerequisites that we need for this. We need that because we're going to use it to recover the password, the token as well, and then also the models, because we still need to manipulate our table within the model side, right? We still need to do that. So now from here onwards, we also need to do this because we need to access our JWT secret. That's the reason why we need that as well. So now we're just going to do the router because we need to have the endpoints configured. So this is password recover, right? So from here onwards, password recover, we're just going to enter your email. From the body, we're going to get email. Then from there, we're just going to say, does the email exist in our database? And then if not, user not found. It means you entered the wrong email address or username. But then if it exists, then it's going to check there and get the user ID. And then it's going to use that to sign for the token. And then it expires in 15 minutes. Remember, this is for recovering your password. It expires in 15 minutes. And then now password recovery initiated, and then it's going to bring back our token. Then if there was an error, and then initiating password recovery failed, right? So now, for instance, here, when I say recover password, it might give us a link where it actually takes you, and then it will ask you additional information about recovering your password, and it will send it via email. Hence, the token will be valid for 15 minutes. So after 15 minutes, it means you must reinitiate a new password recovery functionality. This is just for securing this, so to make sure that it's safe. This is more like your one-time PIN when you request from your bank, etc., etc. Right. Then now password reset. So again here, when we reset the password, you can in this case, when you reset the password, in most cases, most applications, for good practice, you need to have logged in first when you reset the password, right? Hence now, when we say reset the password, it's going to say token. Remember, the token would have already created because you are logged in. It still exists. You are logged in. then you're going to receive that new password that you've entered from the body after you say reset password. Then now it's going to do a payload. It's going to verify the token that you are actually authorized to do this process. It's going to verify that token against what? The one that you've got in your .env. It's going to use that to verify it. If you don't understand all this token and authorization, I suggest that you go read up a little bit on tokens authorization and also some cryptography in terms of all this. Now you'll see that now the hashed password, it's going to take the new password, it's going to hash it, and then it's going to update the new password that it has hashed, where the ID is what? The ID is the user that you are logged in with. It's going to update on that to say, okay, I've updated, password reset was successful. Then it means now you can log in with the new password. And then, but if the token had expired before you can complete your reset, or maybe there was no activity on your account before you can reset, and you come back after the token has expired and you want to reset your password, it's going to check, and then you will see that, oh, it's 15 minutes has been up or an hour has been up, so I cannot reset this password. Then it's going to say invalid or expired token. Then it's going to do that for you. Right, so now we are done with all the functionality for our backend because we've done, we've configured the database, we've connected to our database, we've got our models, and then we've got our middleware, we've got our root with the authentication, user and password, and then we've got our main server file that initiates everything for us and starts everything for us. So now, because we've done everything with our roots, oath, and all that, we can uncomment this code because all these roots exist now, right? You can just come in and uncomment that. All these roots exist. You can just come and uncomment here as well. Okay, right. So now you will see here, root, we're setting up auth, right? We're setting up user, we're setting up password, right? So now let's go and test our application. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to say, I'm going to stop it. Let me run it again. Yeah, just wait for it. There we go. Remember all this information. You will see now it's saying executing create table if it does not exist. Create all those, you see it's adding a primary key as well, executing. So these are possible because of what? This line here, like I told you. But then when you deploy to your production environment, you need to disable this, put it to false so that you don't see all these other things, because you will be sure that your code actually runs. This is just to have a trace on what is happening actually as you are running your code. This is friendly for development phase, right? So now let's go to, okay, before we can go to that, let's go to our database. You will see here, if we come to, okay, we need to refresh first. Let's come here, refresh. Then now if I come to my tables, you will see that now users exist. But then if I come and say view all rows, you will see now that we actually don't have anything within our table. You see that we don't have anything. We just have the primary key, name, surname, email, password, the role. And then remember what I said about when we were creating the model. Remember when we were creating the models, what I said about this last line, timestamps equals to true. This is where now the timestamps are coming in, created at, updated at. These are the two additional that I was talking about earlier. So I hope that makes sense. Let us carry on now. Now we want to test our endpoints. You will see, as I've showed you, that our table is currently empty. And then from there onwards, I want to register a user. Remember, our application is running where? On that HTTP localhost port 3000. So now I want to test authentication. I want to register a user. And then what do I need for me to register a user? This is basically simulation of a form. I need to enter a name. I need to enter a surname. I need to enter email. I need to enter password, right? So for instance, if I remove password, and then I want to do a post method, and then I say send, you will see that it's going to say what? Provide all required fields, right? This is where now when we go back to our code on authentication, this is please provide, oh sorry, this is where it is, please provide all required fields, because I removed password from my request, so it does not see password, so hence it was cached by this if statement there to say please provide all that. So now if I come back and I say, okay, that's fine, everything is there, it exists. Now I want to register this user. When I register that user, now I say send. You will see now it says user registered successfully, and then it creates a token that is valid for what? For an hour. And then it's showing me that this is the user that was created, and that user was created, and the role of the user is user. So everyone that creates a new account on our platform, they're just a normal user until me as an admin, I log in and I assign them the admin role, right? So now we've successfully registered a user. If we come to our table and we refresh this table here, for instance, I can just come and run this. You will see that now, there we go. We've got name, say name, we've got the email address, and then our password is hashed. It's no longer plain. It's no longer this plain text here. Hashed. You will see that it's hashed. It's this way, right? And then you will see also on the role, we've got that user there. Then you will see created at. It's going to show us the time that this user was created and then updated at. For instance, if this was TikTok or Facebook, this is when they know when you actually created your account, which year, what time, etc., etc. That's why it's able to tell you that your account has been existing for 7 years or whatever. Then updated at. Whatever new thing I do on this table, I update something, it's going to tell me that it's going to update this to tell me when was the last time I updated something, right? Great. So now that is what our user. So now if I come to a new endpoint, I want to log in a user now, right? This was for registering a user. This was for registering a user, this endpoint there. And then now I want to log in, right? This is the password. You see? So here you will see that I've got the right email, but I've entered a wrong password. So now if I say log in, you will see it's going to say invalid credentials. It's not telling me whether it's an email or password. It's just telling me that it's an invalid credential. So now if I'm to put the right password now and I log in, you will see it's going to say what? Login successful. And then it's going to create a token for me. And then it's also going to pass what? My details along to say Molato Sekgobela email address that, and then the role and my ID on the database. It's going to pass along this data because these are the data that I'm going to use to need on my profile or whatever to populate. For instance, when I log in, I want to see my name, my surname, and also my username to say I'm logged in as whoever and ever. That is why I'm passing these values again here, so that immediately I log in, I can be able to have access to this information, right? So now we've done our registration, we've done our login, and then we've got our password recover, and then we've got our password reset, right? Now, because I've logged in here successfully, and here is my token that exists for an hour, I'm going to copy this token here. And then I'm going to come to my password reset. I'm going to paste that token there, the current token that's still valid and exists. And then this is the new password that I want to, let me put something that is, yeah, let's put that, right? Remember, at the moment, there's no validation, right, of the password, how long it must be, what characters it must contain, etc., etc. Hence, we don't care about that at the moment, just the functionality. We're going to do all those validations at a later stage. Now, we've got this token, right? Everything now seems right. So let me just remove the S. Let me put E there. So now I've changed the token that was created. So it means it's not a valid token. So if I try and reset the password, you will see it's going to say token is invalid or has expired, right? But now if I take back the original token that actually exists, and I want to see if it will allow me to reset my password, you will see that it will actually allow me to reset my password. So password has successfully been reset. So it means now if I come back to log in and I actually put the new changed password, or actually let's test with this old password. Let's see if it will work. You will see now it will say invalid credentials. But now if I come and put that one, the new one that I've just reset, and then I say do that, it's going to say now log in successful, and it's going to create a new token that is going to also pass my data again, and etc. Right. And then now also on this one, the recover one it's kind of a bit complex because it will need a token. For instance, let's say for instance it's going to need an email. Let's go to the code. Let's go to the code, password recover. Yeah, password recover. It's going to need an email, right? So from here, password recover, we're going to need an email. So I'm just going to do that. Yeah, this is recover. So what will happen here is if I want to recover the password for this, then I can just come and put the email, and then it's going to say password recovery initiated, and then it's going to give me a token. And in this cases, in most cases, it's going to send us an email with a new link for us to view the password, or it's going to send us plain text password on our email, of which is not really the correct way to go about it. But yeah, there are ways to protect your password against sending it plain, especially within emails. So yeah, that's basically the 4 endpoints that we did today. We've got the login, we've got the register, we've got the login, we've got the password recovery, and also the password reset. So now all this, we've been using Postman to test our endpoints. So now we need to build what? We need to build our front end to actually do all these things with a user interface, where now we're going to add password validation, we're going to add all the fields validations and etc. So that you get to see now how the information gets from the back end into the front end, and how it gets from front end into back end, so that we create that seamless communication via the API. So remember, this code that we've written now is the code that sits between our front end and our database. So this is what allows us to communicate with our database in an organized manner and in a safe way of doing that. So this is what an API is, and the purpose it serves to applications. It's there to facilitate the communication between our server or a data pool or a data warehouse with our front end. So that is basically that. I think that will bring us to the end of today's lesson. So basically what I will do now is let me actually push the code to GitHub so that it is available to you guys for check it out, and you can even add some more functionality. So here is a challenge for you, would be go and play around with AWS. See how you can set up a Postgres database on AWS and connect it with your EC2 instance, so that what we're doing locally here is replicated on the cloud. So that would be a challenge, something for you to learn and actually take it a step forward further. Also look at those GitHub actions, the CI/CD pipeline that we did previously. There are a few changes that you would need to do so that this works accordingly. So that will be your homework kind of, or exercise that you need to do up until we do our third week, which is next week same time. So yeah, that is basically what I'd advise you to do in terms of learning further and actually advancing your skills, right? Okay, let me just quickly push this code to GitHub so that you'll have access to it. Okay, great. So yeah, guys, this brings us to the end of our lesson today. So I'm going to take a couple of the questions that I saw on the chat, and let's see if I am able to answer those. Okay, it's fine. I'll deal with this later because it's giving me some errors. Can't remember what I did, but yeah, I'll sort it out and push it to GitHub so that you are able to go back and actually be able to follow along with the code. Right. I see a question here. So setting up a .env file has to do with security of the application. So you are protecting your sensitive data, like your login credentials and your API keys and etc. etc. That it's basically meant for that, so that you separate them from your code instead of having your plain sensitive data within your code repo. You actually separate it from that. So that's basically how you use that to protect your sensitive information. Anyone can kindly assist me with last week's setup so that I can catch up. I'll post the Word document on the code, on the repo on GitHub, so you'll get everything there from last week that you need to use. Don't worry much about the AWS stuff. Just worry more about setting up on your local machine, because that will come at the later stage. Kindly repeat what our homework is. Okay, basically what I'm saying is you can take it a step further if you want. Try and run everything that we've done today on AWS. Also configure an RDS instance that runs PostgreSQL on AWS. Connect that with your EC2 instance server so that you are able to, read and write to a database that is on AWS. That's basically what I'm saying. That should be something that you need to investigate on. I think that's about it. I don't think there's any more questions. Thank you guys for attending, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one, which is the third week. Guys, I'll make sure that I share all the information from the first week on this very same repo on GitHub, so that you get access to everything, so that you can do your own self-study and you are well prepared for the next lesson, which is next week, same time. I think that's about it from me today. Thank you very much to everyone that attended, and I'll see you guys next week.